So now I'm going to use something called set-driven keys to connect the splay to fist attribute to the rotation of the finger and thumb joints. And the way that set-driven key works is it allows you to connect, instead of a one-to-one connection, which is what the connection editor uses. So every time I connected something, the attribute that was being connected is frozen now because it's being controlled by something else. Set-driven keys allow you to use animation, keyframes, to connect these custom attributes, in this case the splay to fist attribute, to keyframes for these finger and thumb joints. So the way to get the set-driven key is it's on my animation menu set here. Under key, I'll open up this set-driven key and choose set, and my set-driven key window pops up. And I want to load the L-arm control as the driver because the splay to fist attribute is going to be driving the rotation, the keyframes of these finger and thumb joints. So I'll load this as the driver. And then I'm going to load each of the finger joints, the first 3 finger joints for the index, middle, ring, and pinky and thumb as the driven. So I'll select the first 3 joints for each of these. Again, I can do this in my scene or I can do it in my hypergraph. I'm not going to select the last joint in each of these chains. And with all of those selected, I'm going to load them in as the driven. So now I want to be able to bring up the attributes that are on each of these finger and thumb joints. So I need to drag on each of these joints. And that way I'll be setting keyframes for all of these joints for the splay to fist attribute. So I'll click on the splay to fist up here. And I'll be animating both the Z, which is that curl direction for the fingers, and the Y, which is the splaying direction for the fingers for all of these. So I'll click rotate Y, hold down Control and hit rotate Z. So now when I click key for the first time here, I will be creating keyframes that say when L-arm control splay to fist equals 0, because I can see that the splay to fist attribute is set to 0. So when splay to fist equals 0, the rotate Y and rotate Z for all of these finger and thumb joints will also equal 0. So I'll press key, and that will set my first set-driven key. And first I'm going to set the L-arm control splay to fist all the way down to -10. And I'll begin animating these so that they reflect the pose of your hand when it's completely splayed. And splayed means that you're stretching it out as wide as you can get it. And all of your fingers stretch when you do that. So make sure you observe your own hand or the hand of someone around you to see what your fingers and your thumbs look like when you splay your hand as wide as you can get it. So I'm going to animate these. And I want to get it as wide as I possibly can because that -10 value will be as far as you'll be able to go. So I want to be able to splay them out as far as I can get them. So about like that. And then for the thumb as well. And they also splay upward slightly, so I want to reflect that as well. And even the ends curl up a little bit on each of the fingers. So about like that. So that's about as splayed as I could possibly get my, maybe this is a little bit too much. I'll rotate this back slightly. So about like that. So back into my set-driven key window. So now when I click key again, I'm going to be creating another set-driven key that says when L-arm control splay to fist equals -10, the rotate Y and rotate Z values for all of these finger joints are going to be at their current values. I think I want to rotate this up a little bit more. Same thing with the pinky. That looks good. So again, L-arm control splay to fist equals -10. all of these joints, the rotate Y and rotate Z values, because those are highlighted, will equal their current values. Click key again. So now, if I go back to L-arm control, I can drag this from 0 down to -10 to splay that hand. And that's the way set-driven key works. So now I'll do the same thing for the fist. I'll save this first. And you'll observe that as your hand forms a fist, and you want to observe this on yourself or someone around you, the fingers don't rotate down simultaneously. When you create a fist, the pinky begins rotating down, followed by the ring, followed by the middle, followed by the index, and then finally the thumb comes over top. So I want to create set-driven keys for values in between 0 and 10 to reflect the way that your fingers rotate down in order to form that fist. So I'll start with a value of 2, and I'll start rotating just the pinky down. And you'll see that it's very difficult to rotate just your pinky without your ring. So your ring will rotate a little bit here as well. So I'll rotate the ring down just a bit as well. So that will be my first keyframe at 2. So now when L-arm control splay to fist equals 2, the rotate Y and rotate Z for all of the finger and thumb joints will be at their current values. So I'll key that. And then I'll set splay to fist to 4. And I'll start rotating these down a little bit more. And at this point, the middle would start to come down. And even the index, just a little bit. About like that. So now, when L-arm control splay to fist equals 4, all these values will be in their current state. Click key again. Set splay to fist to 6. Continue. Again, use your own fingers or from somebody around you to help you figure out exactly the right poses to create a believable fist. So that looks pretty good. So again, L-arm control splay to fist equals 6. All of these values, click key again. And then 8. And here the thumb would start to come down as well. About like that. So now L-arm control splay to fist is 8. These values at their current state. Key. And then finally at 10. And this will be the complete fist. Looks pretty good. And then one more key. So now I have the splay to fist so that when it's -10, it's all the way splayed as wide as it can get. And then it forms a fist as it goes from 0 to 10 in the same manner that you form your fist. So that's the way that set-driven key works. And this is something you wouldn't be able to accomplish with just the connection editor, because a connection is simply a one-to-one connection. When you connect the wrist twist, for example, to the left forearm rotate X, you're simply connecting that custom attribute to that rotation value. There's no in-between values that you can set. So this is the perfect situation to use set-driven keys instead of the connection editor. And this is the same process you would go through to create the index curl, middle curl, ring curl, pinky curl, thumb curl. Same process. You would create a custom attribute, name it accordingly, give it a default, a minimum, maximum, and then use the set-driven key window in the same manner to set keyframes to control the fingers in any way that you would want to. So I'll save this. And the last thing I want to show you is how to use what we call shape parenting to create a curve or a custom curve to select the parts of the rig that you want the animator to be able to select more easily. Because to select the L-arm control now, I either have to select the IK handle and arrow up, or go to the hypergraph and find the L-arm control here, and that's a bit awkward for the animator. You want them to be able to work exclusively in the view panels and not have to go hunting around for the various controllers that you want them to access to animate the rig. So Maya provides us a way to use a curve, whether it's a custom curve or one of the default curve shapes that they provide, to allow the animator to be able to select that curve in the view and actually get to whatever you want them to get to. So I'm going to hide my locators again, just to make this a little bit easier to see for you. And I'm going to create a circle. And I can do that either by going to the Create NURBS Primitive Circle, or go to my Curves menu and click on the very first button, which is a circle. And that just creates a circle at the origin here. And I'm going to move it up to the wrist where that L-arm control is located. And I'll rotate it 90 degrees in the Z. And I'll scale it up so that it's easy for the animator to select even when the model is eventually skinned to the skeleton. So I'm going to make that large enough so that they can select it, so that the animator can select it easily, but not so large that it will move through the rest of the model or the rig when you begin. But not so large so that the curve penetrates the other parts of the rig when the animator starts moving and posing the character. So I'll set that maybe about like that. Now in Maya, every node in your scene, every object and every curve has both a transform node, which is what you get when you select it in the view panel, and then underneath that, what's called a shape node. And they're not displayed by default. You would have to turn them on in the hypergraph under Display, Options, Display, Shape Nodes in order to see them. So by default, you don't see that shape node. You just see the transform here. So you would have to display that under Options, Display, Shape Nodes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's called shape parenting to take this shape node away from this transform and make that shape node a child of the L-arm control. And I can't just parent them. So I could parent the NURBS circle to the L-arm control, but when I select So I could parent this NURBS circle to the L-arm control. So I could parent this NURBS circle to the L-arm control by selecting the NURBS circle, shift selecting L-arm control and pressing P. But then when I select the curve in the scene, I'm still getting just the curve. Even though it's now a child of that L-arm control, I'm still just getting that curve. So what I want to do is I want to parent the shape node to the L-arm control. So the first step is to parent the circle itself. So I'll select the circle, hold down Shift, select L-arm control, and press P to parent. And then I need to freeze the transformations on this circle after it's parented to the L-arm control. So with the NURBS circle selected, you can also select it in the scene here, I'll go to Modify, Freeze Transformations to set the translate and rotate back to 0 and the scale back to 1 at its current state. And now I'm going to parent the shape node to the L arm control. So to parent the shape node for the circle to the L arm control, I'll select the shape node, not the transform, the shape node, hold down Shift and select L arm control, and then I need to use a mel command in order to shape parent that shape node to the L arm control. So down here on my command line where it says mel at the bottom of your screen, in the input field to the right, I'm going to type parent, so P-A-R-E-N-T, space -R, space minus shape, S-H-A-P-E, semicolon. And then press enter. And you can see in my hypergraph that that shape node is now no longer parented to the transform node for the circle, it's parented directly to the L arm control. And I can actually get rid of the transform node for the circle because it's not doing anything anymore. So now in my scene, when I select this circle, I'm actually selecting the L arm control. And this is a very common way for riggers to provide easy, convenient visual ways for the animator to select custom curves or shapes or even objects in the view panel and actually get to custom controls or joints, IK handles, in this case, a custom group node that you've added custom attributes to. Shape parenting is a very common way to accomplish this. So now in my scene, I can select the circle, I get to arm control, I can move it, right? I can't rotate it or scale it because I locked and hid those attributes. I can move the IK handle by moving that all arm control. I can use the arm twist attribute to change the angle of the elbow, the wrist twist to rotate the forearm, the wrist wave to rotate the hand in the wave direction, the roll in the up and down direction. And then I have this splay to fist attribute that I connected to the finger and thumb joints with set driven key that allows me to splay the hand as wide as it can get at -10 and then gradually form a fist from 0 to 10 in the same manner that you form a fist. So I'll save this. And all the techniques and tools and procedures that we used in this tutorial are very similar to the ways you'd go about rigging the entire character. There are differences when rigging the foot, for example, because the foot needs to push against the ground in a way that the hand does not. There are as many different ways to go about rigging a character as there are riggers. As long as it works, and as long as you're giving the animator what he or she is requesting, because a rigger's job is not to create the rig that he or she wants to create, it's to create the rig that the animator wants to use. I do rigging professionally, and I get contracted for jobs all the time where an animator asks me to rig a character in a way that I would never want to use as an animator. But as a rigger, my job is in service to the animator's preferences. So all of the decisions that you make about what the controllers look like, which custom attributes to create, how to lay them out, all of those decisions are almost always driven by the animator on a project. And the rigger's job is to give the animator what he or she asks for. Okay, so give this a try. If you have any questions or problems, reach out to your instructor for help, and good luck.